Always on the lookout for suspicious activity, they noticed another vessel taking refuge from the heavy seas.
The vessel, rather than coming into Falmouth, it turned and went to the other side of Carrick Roads, which is into a small harbour, which is actually St Mawes.
The officers thought it was a local, but then watched as it tied up in a dangerous position.
As the tide started to go out, they realised that this mooring was actually on a mud bank or a sand bank, and the yacht was actually settling and starting to tip.
Always ready to respond to a fellow sailor in need, the cutter decided to help.
So they launched their onboard rigid inflatable, their rib, motored across into St Mawes Harbour, went to the vessel and challenged it.
The officers had come to help, but the man on board was a smuggler who made a startling confession.
And as they stepped aboard, he turned round to them and said, "Oh, right, well, OK, the game's up, there's 6 tons on board."
The officers' act of charity had paid dividends.
They were completely flabbergasted. The first reaction was, well, what do we do now? And then somebody managed to say, well, I better get a notebook out and make a note of this, because effectively I've got a confession already before we go to court. At which point they arrested him.
The skipper was a man called He led them into a cabin to see the drugs for themselves.
There were bales of cannabis literally in every available space within the vessel.
They also found evidence he wasn't working alone.
But 2 passports were actually found on the vessel. So they decided that the best thing to do was to remove him from the vessel. 3 of the cutter crew stayed on board the ketch and wait and see if the crew came back in the morning.
Accomplices did return, right into the trap.
It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. 2 men jumped into the cockpit of the yacht, and basically the cutter crew arrested them there and then.
The men joined their skipper at the police station, where his unusually frank confessions continued.
And he was presented to the custody sergeant. He was then asked, "What's your occupation?" To which he replied, "I'm a drug smuggler."
This time, however, he'd failed. On the day of the trial, all 3 pleaded guilty to their part in the crime.
Mr. was subsequently sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, Mr. to 4 years imprisonment, and Mr. to 5 years imprisonment.
3 more criminals were behind bars, thanks to the keen eyes of the officers and a stroke of luck.
The street value at that time was estimated to be in the region of £14.5 million. At the end of the day, the vessel being forced into Falmouth was really the only reason that we were able to intercept this load. Without that, it's very unlikely anybody would have known that this consignment of drugs was on its way.
Back in Gatwick's North Terminal, Mark is still hoping to find his first drug smuggler. His 2 female suspects are about to be searched. So far, they've cooperated, but the daughter is getting angry.
The search, yeah, obviously I can...
We're going to have a search. As soon as we've had that search, I think we should be able to leave. We've got children to get back to. You're delaying us for no reason. Once you've searched us, you know we have nothing on us, so why are we still holding your custody?
Their story suggests they're carrying drugs, and Mark waits expectantly outside for the results.
Bend over slightly. No, slightly. That's right, and part the cheeks of your bottom.
The strip search finds nothing, but Mark refuses to give up just yet.
A pair of shoes from the lady that we've just searched. I'm going to swap them with our tool that checks for drugs, as it can be an indication that they've swallowed drugs. So I shall do that, get a result. A small indication.
The indication means Mark wants to do a body scan.
0.5, something to think about. With these indications, keen to go for an X-ray, which the mum has already sort of informally said she's happy to do.
What about the daughter in terms of X-raying? Do you think she'll be happy to do that?
She's not happy to be here at the moment.
You don't think they're going to stay? You're going to have to look at arresting them.
Worried about the daughter's reaction to the X-ray, they decide to arrest them.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of being